3 साल का विस्की लेके 50 साल के बाद पिएंगे, दैट विस्की इज स्टिल 3 year old. It ages only in the barrels.
Okay, but not in the bottles.
Not in the bottles.
Okay.
Once it is aged in the barrels and then diluted with water and blended, and then it gets into the bottle, then the final product which is there in the bottle, it's dead. But wine is not like that. Wine is a living thing. Also a misconception where people say that, wine पीने वाला बहुत कम alcohol वाला पीता है. But if you actually look at the real alcohol content, there is around 21% of absolute alcohol in a wine glass, which is a 150 ml glass. See, if you want to connect wine and women, for that matter, एक तो उनका जो preference level का जो बात करेंगे तो that's also because you don't find too many women who want to get into too much of drinking.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who would like to nourish their drink, and that's exactly what you need to do with wine. Wine is like falling in love. You don't rush into it.
Yes.
आपको nurture करना है, आपको ये करना है. That is how this connotation of wine and woman comes into the picture. As the years go, as the months go, wine keeps evolving. There are certain wines that age well. There are certain wines that actually goes bad. वो भी लोगों को नहीं मालूम है. I have had instances where people say, अरे यार पुराना जितना वाइन है उतना बहुत अच्छा है. But actually, if you take a New World wine, which should be drunk young, and if it goes old, then actually the wine is bad.
दोस्तों, स्वागत है आपका हार्ट टू हार्ट एट डिजीवर्स स्टूडियो, जहां हम बातें करते हैं रिलेटेबल, जॉयस एंड इंसाइटफुल. आज हम ऐसे टॉपिक पे बात करने वाले हैं जो इंडिया में मशहूर तो है लेकिन थोड़ा टैबू है, अल्कोहल. इसी टॉपिक को आगे लेके जाने के लिए हमारे साथ आज गेस्ट जुड़े हुए हैं विद अ 30 year plus एक्सपीरियंस फ्रॉम द इंडस्ट्री, मिस्टर सुकुमारन नायर. कुमार सर, वेलकम टू द शो.
नमस्ते.
नमस्ते सर.
Very honored to be here.
थैंक यू सर. सर, वाइन्स के बारे में हमें जानना है, लेकिन पहले हम जानना चाहते हैं कि अल्कोहल ओवरऑल जो हम इंडिया की बात करते हैं, इट इज वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट मार्केट स्पेशली इन विस्की. बट वही बात हम लोग अगर वाइन्स के ऊपर करते हैं तो वाइन्स का मार्केट हमारा अभी भी नेसेंट है, थोड़ा डेवलपिंग है. व्हाई सो?
Wine as a category is very new in this industry, in India as well. But उसके अंदर बहुत इंटरेस्ट आ रहे लोगों को कि हमको वाइन पीना है, बट लोगों को वाइन के बारे में कोई जानकारी नहीं है.
तो क्या डिफरेंस होता है विस्की, वाइन और बाकी सारे अल्कोहल्स में? मतलब बेसिक हमारे
अल्कोहल कंटेंट एक बात होता है कि जहाँ पे जैसे हमने कहा कि विस्की में 40% अल्कोहल होता है, जबकि वाइन में 14% अल्कोहल होता है. बट दैट इज ऑल्सो अ मिसकंसेप्शन वेयर पीपल से दैट वाइन पीने वाला बहुत कम अल्कोहल वाला पीता है. बट इफ यू एक्चुअली लुक एट द real alcohol content, there is around 21% of absolute alcohol in a wine glass, which is a 150 ml glass. But if you talk about a whiskey of 30 ml, it's only around 12%.
So in absolute terms, the number of
absolute terms में alcohol content जो है वो wine में ज़्यादा है.
So you're consuming more alcohol in a glass of wine as compared to say a glass of
compared to a 12, I mean, if you are having like 60 ml whiskey, then that's a different case because you are almost in par with a glass of wine.
Right.
But that's the kind of misconception that people have.
Correct.
Wine and woman, अरे वो ladies का drink है, ये ऐसा नहीं होता है.
But typically I've seen that especially women tend to prefer wine because one, maybe that perception of less alcohol, but at the same time it is in the some sense of taste or experience, it is far better than the alcohol or spirit that we actually usually consume.
See, if you want to connect wine and women, for that matter, एक तो उनका जो preference level का जो बात करेंगे तो that's also because you don't find too many women who want to get into too much of drinking.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who would like to nourish their drink, and that's exactly what you need to do with wine. Wine is like falling in love. You don't rush into it.
Yes.
आपको नर्चर करना है, आपको ये करना है. दैट इज हाउ दिस कनोटेशन ऑफ वाइन एंड वुमन कम्स इनटू द पिक्चर. तो और विस्की में तो पीपल जस्ट वांट टू गेट ड्रंक. दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम. दैट्स द टैबू.
So basically you are saying that the purpose with which people actually consume alcohol is also completely different. तो आपने कहा विस्की इंटॉक्सिकेशन के लिए ज्यादा कंज्यूम होती है, whereas wine from the point of view of experience, taste buds को एक अलग से आपको एक फ्लेवर मिलने के लिए.
Wine is something that you enjoy over a conversation and all that thing. Whiskey तो बोतल लेके आओ, टल्ली हो जाओ. So that's a different kind.
दोनों के अलग मजे हैं.
अलग है, but then things have to change. Things will change,
Right.
And I think over a period of time things will change. Like you were talking about, the bigger market alcohol consumption. It's a big country.
Right.
We're talking about 1.5 billion people, but at the same time, how many of these people are in the cosmopolitan city?
When you
Those
say,
kind of things are matters.
मैं उसी टॉपिक पे आने वाला था सर. थैंक्स मच फॉर ब्रिंगिंग दैट अप. हम जब बात करते हैं कंजम्पशन ऑफ अल्कोहल, स्पेशली वाइन, व्हिच इज लाइक अ sophisticated drink as compared to very very preferred beer or maybe your whiskey. Metros में इसका consumption is higher than non-metro rural cities is what we have observed typically. इसका क्या reason हो सकता है सर?
Availability is one key element because wine is a living thing. Unlike the spirit, it's a dead thing. आपका whiskey or gin, vodka जो भी है, once it gets into the bottle, it is dead. There is nothing happening in that bottle.
Right.
आप 3 साल का whiskey लेके 50 साल के बाद पिएंगे, that whiskey is still 3-year-old.
Okay, is it?
But wine is not like that. Wine is a living thing.
Oh, so हमारा misconception है सर. मुझे लगता था कि 12-year-old whiskey, single malt जो रहती है हमारी, Scotch जिसको कहते हैं, तो that is मतलब जहाँ जैसे उसके number of years बढ़ते जाते हैं, that becomes superior.
It ages only in the barrels.
Okay, but not in the bottles.
Not in the bottles.
Okay.
Once it is aged in the barrels and then diluted with water and blended, and then it gets into the bottle, then the final product which is there in the bottle, it's dead.
And in terms of wine, it also can
Wine is a living thing.
Okay.
So उसमें क्या है कि as the years go, as the months go, wine keeps evolving. There are certain wines that age well. There are certain wines that actually goes bad. वो भी लोगों को नहीं मालूम है.
Okay.
I have had instances where people say, अरे यार पुराना जितना वाइन है उतना बहुत अच्छा है. But actually, if you take a New World wine, which should be drunk young, and if it goes old, then actually the wine is bad.
Is it? Okay, so there's
The
a
white
shelf
wine
life.
becomes rosé, which means the wine has changed the color.
Correct.
Because the wine is getting spoiled. So the New World wine that needs to be drunk early, and the Old World wines some of them do grow better.
But then now coming from the consumer point of view, I'm just trying to understand. So when we understand that, of course, it's not a sasta nasha. It's slightly expensive as compared to a glass of, say, whiskey. Wine, I'm saying.
That is the challenge.
Right, that's one challenge. But the same time, shelf life that you talk about, that whiskey can be stored in a bottle and it does not grow into something else. It stays the same because it's a dead form of liquor. Whereas wine ferments and it evolves and maybe it can also go bad. So is that the reason why people usually don't store wine, especially in a country like India?
See, personally, if you ask me, you should never store wine at home unless and until you have a house which has got, temperature controlled, 24/7 air conditioning facilities and all that. Because, like I said, when you say something is living, which means it needs to be treated well. Right? So, there are two things that can kill the wine. One is the temperature. So if you keep it in a very warm place, against the sunlight, harsh lights, the wine can go bad.
Okay.
If you talk about whiskey, there is no challenge. Nothing happens to the whiskey. You keep it for whatever. At the most, you might have some evaporation that can happen because it's a spirit
Alcohol
inside.
Yes.
But when it comes to wine, so if you do not have that kind of facilities, then why keep the wine in your house? Let it be there in the store, provided the store has got the facility.
Got it.
So touching upon your point about, in India, in the interiors, why wine is not popular, wine people are, because they don't have that kind of facility. The store facilities are not there. Availability, not many people travel with wines to that side, and other side is that they don't have that facility.
Got it.
So the Indian wines are growing in that way. They are reaching out to those markets, but it will take time.
Okay, so we spoke about the fermentation and the storage of liquor. But now let's come to an important aspect that we are touching upon, sir. That is pricing. And it I think plays a vital role when it comes to consumerism, especially in India, regardless of the product, whether it's from the consumer durable or alcohol or even fashion. So how pricing plays a role in terms of consumption, especially of wine, because people perceive that wine is going to be like expensive liquor. So how do you tackle that?
See, pricing is very important, as it is important in any other category. One of the challenges that we have is that a good quality, decent wine would cost you somewhere around 1,500 rupees. And a bottle of whiskey would cost you around 1,500. So what you're talking about is there are 5 glasses that you get out of a bottle of wine because the standard pour is like 150 ml for a glass. And then you have 12 pecks of 60 ml that is coming from the whiskey.
Right.
So if you're having a consumption in-house, in the home party, then people would prefer to have a whiskey because it can go on long for a
Servings will be
longer
more.
period.
Yeah.
And the wine tends to be too expensive because if you want to keep like 3 to 4 bottles of wine, it's kind of an expensive affair.
But I really have some friends who are so affectionate towards wine that they actually consume the entire bottle within one go. How healthy is that?
There is, in my young days when I used to be in retail in the industry itself, wine industry, every bottle of wine had one statement that was written as wine should be drunk in moderation, because you can't overdrink wine. Like I said, wine is a drink that you need to experience, you need to enjoy. It's not something that you can have 2 or 3 bottles and finish it off.
Right.
I have had many instances myself where I have spent evenings where you would polish off a bottle of wine. It all depends on the kind of company that you have.
Correct.
Yeah. Because I always say it doesn't matter what I drink, it matters with whom I'm drinking. So those kind of things does apply. But end of the day, one of the biggest competition for wine is the whiskies, which you get it at an equally good price. So the wine needs to be more affordable, and for that I would say the Indian wines, you should complement them, because you do get some good value Indian wines. They are also of decent quality, and that is encouraging people to get into the wine category.
Yes.
So once you get people into the wine category, then the next job is to take them to the next level, allow them to experience better wines, maybe a little bit expensive wines.
Right.
Because end of the day, one thing you need to remember and be always aware of is that wine is an agricultural product. So nobody in the world makes bad wine.
Correct.
So all the wines are good wines. It depends as to whether you like this wine or what wine I like, whether you like it or not. So that's the kind of challenges.
But in that case, how do you define the pricing, which is a standard? Like this is a wine that comes from this particular region, this particular country, this particular standard of grade of grapes. It's better or not? How do we define that then?
You cannot decide, you cannot get the right pricing by getting into those kind of details. Because there is a famous wine called Chablis from France. You can get a Chablis for $12 and you can get some Chablis for $120.
Wow.
Right? So you're talking about a similar grape variety, but coming from different, different winery, different plot. Because the terroir is very important. The land where the wine grows. So when I say wine this time, I'm talking about vine, which is the plant where the grape grows. So that's very important. So and when you're looking at the pricing, then the new world wines, the countries who have been making wines for 400-500 years, though they all fall into new world wines. So those wines tends to be a little bit budget or affordable.
India falls in that, sir?
India will fall into that. India will fall into that. South Africa falls into that.
Okay.
So that's where you get affordable wines and very
good quality.
Easy to drink. Very easy to drink wines.
Now coming to like you're mentioning some global aspects of drinking. So how global drinking as a culture is different from Indian culture of drinking?
Well, it's something that I would not want to generalize as such. But if you go to a dinner session at a place where you have, I wouldn't want to color them as well, but in the foreign country, the way the whole dinner starts is like you start the evening with an hot spirit, which could be like an aperitif to create that kind of hunger. Then you have the dinner, which is accompanied usually with always wine.
Wine, yes.
Because the wine complements the food, and the conversation is always between the people.
Right.
And then you end up the evening with probably a cream liqueur, or you would want to have some cognac, brandy just as a digestive. So that's how it all translates there. But in India, the moment food comes, people stop. So I've had instances where the party is going on, everybody is drinking, the wife comes and says, 3 baar khana garam kiya hai, I am not going to do it again, so you better have food. And there are instances where the wife says that, खा लो अभी, उसके बाद जितना चाहिए पी लो.
Right.
And the guys are like, अरे यार मस्त है, the wife is so accommodative, let's have food, let's come back. But the fact of the matter is that Indians, I'm not again generalizing, but majority of Indians, they cannot handle drinks after food. आप उनके पेट में खाना दे दो, वो दारू बंद कर देते हैं.
Right.
That is the best way a woman can stop drinking in the house. खाना खिला दो, दारू बंद हो जाता है.
Right. Jokes apart, I totally agree. But that has to do with something to do with how people have perceived or people have shown that liquor is something to be had just before food because you cannot digest your liquor properly. Is that true?
See, for us, drinking is like an occasion. For them, drinking is like a way
regular.
It's very regular.
Right.
Every evening they would have a glass or two of wines along with the food, which is not seen as something wrong.
Right.
But in this part of the world, drinking can be done on a weekend, on a celebration day. So it's not very common. So that's also,
it also
one
is
of
a
the
taboo
reasons.
because people don't openly talk about different sorts of drinks and they don't drink often in front of their parents and in front of their in-laws.
Which is true. Which is a very, it's not a good thing to happen. But then the moment you say, कोई शराब पीता है, तो straight away the connotation goes to like, शराबी movie का कुछ याद आता है या देवदास का कुछ याद. That's not the right thing. I myself, when I got into the industry, I still remember my dad with his friends were just having a chat, and the friends asked my dad, ये करता क्या है, किस industry में काम करता है. And my father actually waited for me to get out of his sight, and then he told his friends, which I observed later, is that दारू के business में काम करता है. It took me some time to convince my dad that that daru that you are saying, that's not my business. I work for an international company.
Correct.
And I deal with alcohol, which is not like I won't say that it is good for health, but it's not the kind that you...
But that also comes from the fact that prehistorically India had भारत देश के अंदर बहुत सारे illegal ठेके हुआ करते थे जहाँ पे distillation process was not proper. लोग मरते भी थे, बहुत सारे घर भी तबाह हो गए, बिकॉज ऑफ विच आई थिंक दारू के प्रति लोगों का जो एक परसेप्शन और इमेज बनी हुई है दारू पीने की और दारू पीने वालों की, वो शायद खराब बनी है. तो मेरे ख्याल से वाइन पे शिफ्ट होके शायद वो इमेज थोड़ी सी ठीक हो सकती है.
नहीं, आपने वो जो विस्की के बारे में या स्पिरिट्स के बारे में या जो 2 ठेके के बारे में बात किया, विच इज अ वेरी वैलिड पॉइंट. ये इज वन ऑफ द रीजन व्हाई पीपल हैव दैट परसेप्शन. And which is also one of the reason why you will see in India there are a lot of states which are going dry now.
Yes.
वो dry declare करते हैं कि वो बोलते हैं नहीं इससे लोग मरते हैं. Those are debatable point, and that's where wine plays a role.
Correct.
Because when wine comes into the picture, then we are talking about qualitative drinking. But you're not drinking a wine to get drunk.
Yes.
You're drinking wine for a for a good experience. Like I do a little bit of training here and there in different countries. I always tell these young people, ऐसे आप कभी भी कोई रेस्टोरेंट में जाएंगे, you're there with your wife, with your girlfriend, with a family, friends. Don't ask for whiskeys, don't ask for hard spirits. Drink wine. Preferably in a restaurant where wine sells good. Drink wine because you're enjoying that drink and you're enjoying the ambience and the conversation. And at the same time, the point there is not to get drunk. Correct. You don't want to go with your family, get drunk and then come back. So always try that. And the other thing that I would like to tell these guys is that never stick to one grape variety.
Oh, okay.
Keep trying different grape varieties. You never know, because you might like a red wine called Shiraz, or you might like a Cabernet Sauvignon, or you might like a Pinotage. You will only come to know when you drink it.
Correct.
So you need to keep changing it until such time that you come to know, okay, मैंने काफी सारा ट्राई किया है, but there is this wine that suits my palate, which is very important. That's the important thing. Yeah.
Correct. One more thing which I wanted to ask on this similar lines is, when you say preference or taste, how long it takes for one person to kind of usually develop their taste in alcohol, especially wines? कितना time लगता है सर?
ये तो आप
और उसको टेस्ट कैसे करें? So basically there is a tasting process for wine as well. कि there is a process कि आप ग्लास में stir करो, उसको smell करो, then you.
See, usually क्या होता है कि wine, as I said, being a living thing, there is a lot of things that are happening inside. So the normal process of wine tasting is that you pour the wine into the glass. Yeah. When it is white wine, it is always chilled. In red wine, I would say cold, because ideally they say red wine should be drunk in a room temperature.
Okay.
But the guy who has written room temperature, his country is in 20 degrees or whatever it is. But you come to my home in Mumbai, it is 45 degrees. So the room temperature doesn't work.
Yes.
So that's why what you need to do is ensure that the bottle of wine is in the fridge maybe 6 hours or 8 hours before you want to open the wine, so that it's cold. Once it's poured into the glass, whether it is white or red, first you need to see the color of the wine. So you look at the color, and when you see the color, what you're trying to see is not whether it is white or red. What you're seeing is the condition of the wine. A good condition wine, red wine, would be very clear, very colorsome. And if it is bad, then you will get a little bit of brownish,
darker tone,
darker brownish color, which means that the wine has lost its luster. When it comes to white wines, it will be as clear that you can see the stem of the wine glass. Because which means that there is no smokiness inside. So that's the step one. You look at the color, and then you nose the wine. So when you do a tasting, you should always remember a wine drinking in a glass. When I say 150 ml, that's the wine pour in a glass. But when you're doing a tasting, then you need to use maybe 30 ml or 45 ml. The reason is when you're nosing it, your nose should not go inside the wine.
Correct.
So that's why you need that wine. And before, when you're nosing the wine, you also roll the wine. The reason why you roll the wine is you are allowing a product which has been in the bottle for a long time to interact with the oxygen and open up.
Wow.
So when it opens up, you get a lot of flavors that comes out of that action. And once you have done that, then obviously you taste it. So you sight the wine, whether it is clear. Then you nose the wine, and you get that flavors in there. Then you taste the wine, and then you roll it in your mouth, and there you get different characteristics of the wine.
Asking you more questions, थोड़े से हम जानते हैं कि वाइन्स के टाइप्स क्या क्या है. So हमें पता है कि रेड एंड व्हाइट वाइन तो बहुत कॉमन टाइप्स लोगों को पता है. There is something called a sparkling wine. ये क्या है?
See, वो जो वाइन टाइप्स में जो नॉर्मल वाइन्स होते हैं, जो 14-15% अल्कोहल बाय वॉल्यूम, उसको हम लोग स्टिल वाइन्स बोलते हैं.
स्टिल
वाइन हो, वाइट वाइन हो, रोजे वाइन हो, दे फॉल इनटू दैट स्टिल वाइन कैटेगरी. Then you have another one category which is a sparkling wine. So sparkling wine, like the name suggests, there is bubbles in it. It's got sparkle in it. And within the sparkling wine category, you have sparkling wine and champagne.
Champagne, yes.
Yeah.
So champagne is a superior form of wine only, or it's a different form of alcohol?
No, it is a wine which is sparkling. So champagne is a sparkling wine. Now the difference between a sparkling wine and a champagne is that the champagne can be called as champagne only if it is produced in the Champenoise region in France. The difference, and the big difference, is the way it is produced. In case of champagne, the fermentation happens inside the bottle.
Okay.
So there are two fermentation that happens inside the bottle, and that's the reason why you will see this bubbles that you find in a glass of champagne are much minute, smaller, and that it remains in the glass for a longer period of time. So if you are in a party and somebody gives you a sparkling wine and they say that it is a champagne, it's very easy to catch because a normal sparkling wine, the bubbles will go off after some time. And the bubbles tend to be bigger.
But in a glass of champagne, they will still be around.
They will be around for a much longer time. It will be going.
But in terms of taste, do they taste different, sir?
They are different because when the fermentation happens inside, the kind of grapes that I used for the making of champagne, they are pretty superior grapes that I use. Technically speaking, for a champagne, for a sparkling wine, you just need a still white wine. You can just infuse some carbon dioxide. Some of the, low or high volume producing sparkling wine companies use that method.
Right.
But there are certain countries where they make sparkling wines in the champagne method, which means they make the fermentation happens inside the bottle. Yeah. But they cannot call it champagne. So they call it with different name like kava and all that. So
what is it called?
Kava.
Kava. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a new thing for us.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more thing. So I've read somewhere that the port wine is a much stronger brand or stronger type of wine. What is a port wine? How is it different from a regular wine?
Port wine is a wine that has come about from when the wine was moving from one country to far off countries where they wanted that wine to remain good during that long journey.
Yeah.
So what they would do is they would fortify the wine. So the port wine falls into, like the sparkling wine, it falls into the category of fortified wines. So what it means is that the normal wine has been fortified with a spirit. Yeah.
So in terms of sparkling, it is with the injection of air, which is aerated.
In sparkling. Here it is, blend. It is mixed with spirit. Now this spirit that is added, fortified with the normal wine, they are what we call it as burnt wine. So what it means is that the wine which is distilled,
right,
which turns out to be brandy. So that's the kind of spirits that used to fortify there.
And it is much stronger than the regular
The alcohol content is increased because of the fortification with the spirit.
Now, coming to the last part of our conversation, it has been a very insightful conversation. So, one area where I think especially youth lack awareness is the fact that any drink, whether it's wine or liquor, it needs to be consumed in moderation, like you said in the first part of the video. And we also know that drinking and driving is completely hazardous, and it should not just put your own life but someone else's life at stake by doing something illegal. Does wine, because it has a low content of alcohol, not in terms of per glass pour, but in general, also the intoxication rate of wine consumption is slightly on a lower side as compared to a hard liquor like whiskey or rum or brandy. So do you think control over steering or control over mind, for that matter, of course steering is illegal, but inebriation is slightly slower in terms of in wine consumption?
See, when it comes to drinking and driving, obviously it's a zero tolerance.
Sure.
So that's something that nobody will promote and no one wants to promote. And lately, you have these call caps and all that thing very freely available.
Yes.
So that's not an issue at all. But if you're talking about alertness and if you're talking about how it affects, drinking in moderation can sometimes be very good. Yeah, especially when you're talking about wines. Like a white wine is nothing, just a fresh alcoholic, drink that you can enjoy on its own. But when it comes to red wine, the red wine has got a lot of antioxidants. Now, antioxidants come from the skin. And to make a red wine, the skin is very important because the color of the red wine comes from the skin. So when the color is extracted at the same time, the antioxidants are there. These antioxidants actually help to reduce a little bit of stress. Antioxidants are good to improve your HDL, which is a good cholesterol.
Correct.
So all those kind of. Now, when I say it is good for health, which means it needs to be taken as a medicine. So if you want to take it as a medicine, then it has to be taken in moderation.
Correct.
So that's very important. So that's where the whole conversation starts. That the red wine needs to be drunk, or any wine for that matter, needs to be drunk in moderation. And enjoyed.
One last question, sir. In terms of health consciousness, a lot of people want to kind of avoid drinks altogether because they have a lot of calories and it takes a lot of efforts to kind of burn those calories now. तो क्या आप recommend करेंगे wine because they have lesser calories, or do they have actually higher calories? As a perception, we usually think that wine will have lesser calories.
No, there are calories in all the alcohol. So basically, you will have calories. One of the biggest calorie intake that happens while drinking is not necessarily from the alcohol. The intake of calorie comes from what you have along with the alcohol. So we just say, vodka is considered to be something which has got very low calories, but then you mix Coke in it.
Yeah. Then everything goes for a toss.
And then that calorie count is gone for a toss.
Yes.
Otherwise, when you're sitting and having a drinking session, you eat all the oily stuff. Those are the things that actually kills you. But otherwise, anything that you drink in moderation, then the calories should not be a challenge.
All right, and now coming to this, the new age, new world of wine. You mentioned Australia is one of them. India, of course, is one of them. And South Africa, for sure, where you have an expertise in. So, how does South African wine gel and fit well with the consumer behavior of India?
See, South African wines, the unique thing about the South African wines is that we make good quality wines at a great value. Other than that, one of the biggest USP that we have with South African wines is that South African wines tend to be very fruit forward.
Okay.
So when I say fruit forward, we don't use the word sweet because that's not what we're trying to say. Is that different grape varieties have got different characteristics. So you have Shiraz, which has got a little bit of spice. You've got Merlot, which is more rounded. You've got Cabernet Sauvignon, which is much more punchy. But whatever these grape varieties, when we make wines, they all tend to have a fruit forward in nature. That's something that gels well with Indian palate. I would say Southeast Asia, I would say.
Okay.
So people out there would want to have these wines
with different flavors.
But because of that fruit forwardness, they enjoy it. And because these are New World wines, which are usually drunk very young, these wines tend to be drunk on its own. So you don't need to really complement it with a lot of food and difficult surroundings.
And if I understand correctly, GenZs are basically digging into the South African wines as well.
Gen Z in general is trying to stay away from wine, to be honest, or trying to stay away from alcohol, not wine as such, because they are more into exercise and fitness conscious and all that. In fact, if you go to Sri Lanka, they have the first dry bar, which is a non-alcoholic dry bar that's opened for Gen Zs. You have all the spirits that are available. You have got whiskey, gin, vodka, but they are all zero alcohol. So that's the Gen Z movement that is happening.
Okay, now let's move to a segment where we'll ask rapid fire questions, couple of questions, not more, to Kumar sir about his preferences of liquor and what sort of food he combines with it. So Kumar sir, do you prefer red wine or white wine, or how is it?
Oh, I prefer red wine.
And do you prefer wines as a category or any other form of liquor?
Given an opportunity, if it's a very close-knit surrounding, then I would prefer to have a wine. But if it is just friends, boys' night out kind of a thing, I would prefer to have a whiskey. And the reason why I would have a whiskey is because, it doesn't have to be complemented with a lot of food and it's something that you can enjoy on its own.
What is your choice of food when it comes to having wine along with?
Well, wine needs to be complemented with some decent green salads and easy to drink.
And non-veg?
Non-veg preferably, but then I wouldn't want to complicate it too much.
Okay. All right, sir, आपसे बात करके बहुत मजा आया, and thank you so much for a lot of insightful information that you have given to me and our audiences. Alright guys, so इसी बात पे हम आपसे विदा लेंगे. Thank you so much guys for listening to this podcast where in Heart to Heart we had Kumar sir interacting with us and giving us a lot of insight about wine specifically. अगले एपिसोड में मिलेंगे किसी नए गेस्ट के साथ. तब तक के लिए शुक्रिया. मिलेंगे Heart to Heart में.